What's going on, Paul? Welcome to the show.
Hey JT, how's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. We're
Awesome. So,
excited.
yeah, it's an exciting time. I mean, the bear market's kind of rough, but I mean, for anyone paying attention, there's so much going on, and honestly, it's a really exciting time to be in the ecosystem. So to get started, for those that are unaware, Algofi is one of the leading Algorand dApps in terms of TVL on Algorand, of course, positioning itself as Algorand's DeFi hub with its lending and borrowing protocol, yield farms, and decentralized exchange. And our guest today is Paul Colella, the founding engineer at Algofi, previously a software developer at Citadel and Five Rings Capital. So I'd like to, of course, welcome you to the show as I have already, but let's dive right into your background real quick before we get started on the new updates with Algofi, and just fill us in over here at JT Invest in You, and fill us in on who you are and how your background kind of shaped where you are now.
Yeah, so I studied at MIT with John actually, and I graduated in 2016. And then in the intervening years, I joined Algofi about a year ago. So between then, as you mentioned, I was at Five Rings and Citadel,
Yep.
doing real back end dev heavy software work. And then John, who was also at Citadel, he left, and I left around the same time. And we started working on Algofi, and I joined him and Owen, who had been working on it for a few months. And I would say one thing that kind of the three of us all had is we have this perspective from a financial world in how we approach code that I think has been extremely valuable. We are all we've been very plugged in our previous careers to a type of software engineering that, really there is no room for error, which that's kind of what you end up with here on, these smart contracts is, you got to write perfect code. And then obviously there's a financial aspect where I was a software engineer, they were traders. But they were more plugged into kind of seeing the inefficiencies of TradFi and what we can do to improve things. And I got hooked pretty much immediately as soon as I started working with them, and they were showing me like what we can do so quickly on this platform. And then it was kind of a blur. We had about 3 months where we pumped out the V1 of the protocol. And for anyone who's ever built anything software wise, building something at that scale in 3 months is kind of like unbelievable. And I'm not saying that we're unbelievable. I'm saying that the technology really, like, that's where I got hooked. The fact that we could do things at that level of security and that level of scalability in 3 months is like kind of beyond belief. And so since then, it's just been the team grinding things out and pushing out new products, and we're very excited about the V2 coming out. So we've learned a lot, but also Algorand has come so far in the last 9 months.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of protocol upgrades on Algorand's end that I'm sure Algofi is going to benefit from. So let's just jump right into it. What will be some of the differences in the V2 lending protocol?
Yeah, so the V1, it was actually began to get built before even contracts had accounts. So they had this logic sig escrow account kind of thing. Luckily, before we launched, we had the ability to use contract accounts, but we still were pretty limited. There was no contract-to-contract calls, and a lot of the quality of life features just weren't there, and those came in around January, and we utilized them for our AMM, which is a much simpler protocol. But it was obvious to us that we wanted to take these into account for the V2. And what they've allowed us to do is kind of, it's going to feel very similar to most users, but under the hood, it's going to be a lot more efficient. Many fewer transactions. Anyone familiar with our current protocol knows that there's like 10 transactions to do one little thing. As well as the ability to opt in and out of markets at will. We have the ability to add as many markets as we want to the future, and kind of the way we designed it is for modularity. So it's not going to be we're going to do a V3, V4, V5. The idea is going forward, we've got this central hub that's really solid. And if we want to add a market that can do, some specific thing. And there's a number of things that we've heard people talk about they might want, whether that be like fixed term loans, or LP token loans. Like all of these are things that we can do on top of this platform without having to go back to ground zero. And pretty much like the way that we have been able to leverage these contract to contract calls to allow us to incorporate all of this into a system that's just a lot more dynamic. As far as things that users are going to say, the protocol is composable this time, which means basically it can be, you can take operations in the lending protocol and connect them to operations either also in the lending protocol or with other protocols in a single atomic action. And that's going to let us, people who are familiar with the protocol, with Algofi, I've seen Zap, which is how we do that in the AMM. It lets you do a swap and a pool action all at once. Now we're going to be able to do things like a borrow and a stake all at once. One seamless
That's
action.
fantastic. That's awesome, because I'm not going to lie, sorry to interrupt, but I will. It's super simple, but the Zap function was probably one of my favorite additions to the platform. It's just so nice to be able to go from your token right into the pool pair and then go farm it wherever you're going to farm it or what have you. But yeah, if you can continue.
Yeah, exactly. And we've also, which is currently going through audit, we've overhauled our staking. That will also be composable, which it was not in the past. And it's really going to allow us to build these more complicated things. And I think as Algorand expands and more other protocols take on this composability standard, it'll let you do really interesting things. Like there's 4 big AMMs right now. If you want to go swap USDC to algo, in small amounts, it doesn't really matter. But in large amounts, splitting up that order across different AMMs, that's the best way to do it. And composability lets you do that in an atomic way. So that's very cool. And then one thing that is a huge thing that a lot of people have been asking for is it will be ledger compatible completely.
Awesome.
Which, a lot of people care about that. A lot of the big LPs that have, hundreds of millions of algos, they care about that. It was basically not possible for us to do that in the V1, given some of the constraints of Algorand. But with some of the quality of life upgrades and us learning a few more tricks, we found a way to make it work in a pretty clean way. And then, not to drone on and on, the other thing that will be coming not right at launch, but in the coming weeks. Oh, you got your ledger right there.
Yeah, I advise everyone to get one myself. So this is fantastic news, honestly.
Is we're going to be launching a V2 of our stable token as well. And that's going to be stable 2 is the name. And the reason why it's a stable 2 is because stable 1, like stable, is essentially minted from the V1 protocol. That's where it exists. It can't exist elsewhere. So we are creating a new version of that in the V2 app, and the new version actually is going to have a lot of things that are going to make it. We learned a lot. I think that we maybe had a little bit of hubris and we thought, oh, stablecoin's easy. We got it all pegged.
Yeah.
It's been pegged for months now, which is great. But it was not easy, and we learned a lot along the way. So the new stable 2, if you will, one thing we've been looking at is LP staking. So LP collateral. So the nano pool collateral, USDC for stable 2, will be viable collateral on the protocol. We've already seen folks start bringing LP tokens as collateral, and that's something we'll be doing as well. And then the really big thing is the actual stable market itself. In our original protocol, the actual stable market is no different than another market. We just kind of tweaked it a little bit to do this behavior. The actual stable market in the new protocol is custom built for this, and stable that you supply will actually earn APR at the current APR rate of stable. And that's huge, because right now, you might say stable interest rate now is 6.5%. If stable's trading under peg in our current system, you can buy it cheap, buy it at 99 cents and stake it and earn 6.5%. That's pretty good. But then your capital's all locked up. Now what you can do is you can buy it and you can just supply it as collateral into the lending market and earn that 6.5% and still have access to that capital. And that's going to make for a much, much more efficient system. Yeah, this is the V1 right here. And if you look at that, there's 1.3 million stable collateral there that it earns no APR.
Yep.
And in the V2, it will earn that 6.5%.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's good news. I mean, is that basically where I think you might have just mentioned that, but is that basically where the staking
Stability,
rewards come? Yeah, right here, that 6.5%, is that where that comes from?
exactly.
Oh, cool. So it's just going to be merged into the supply
Yeah,
of
it's
the
going to be
stable itself,
merged,
so you don't have to go stake it.
and you're not staking it now. It's collateral. You can go and borrow
E-
against it.
Exactly.
It just makes for a much more dynamic, stable coin that is going to be a lot more useful for people. I think Stable One has been very useful, and we found a lot of cool ways to employ it, and it's become the main asset exchange on our AMM.
Yep.
But Stable Two, I think it really takes everything we've learned and it kicks it up a notch.
Now, V2 is set to launch late this month, or is it in the beginning of next month?
The current plan, I believe, is so V2 exists today, but it is planned to be publicly available, I believe, Monday. Um,
Oh,
but
fantastic.
that's been bouncing between Monday and Friday, and so I'm not going to commit to one of those days because John knows the answer to
Soon, soon.
that.
We've got
Very
soon,
soon.
at least with a handful of days. So that's exciting. Um, and I heard there's an app as well. Is this a mobile app?
It's just a web app,
Okay,
but
okay, okay.
our V1 I think had a pretty rudimentary web experience, and Matt, who is our main front end engineer, and he's been working very hard on greatly improving the front end experience. I believe, though I'm not 100% sure on this, that you will be able to use Para right in the web app. But yeah, we definitely have been focusing on improving that because the first one it worked, um, but we ended up having a lot more mobile users than we expected,
Yeah.
which was just something interesting for us. We had a lot of users who they said mobile's the only way I do this. Where I would think from day one when we were building this, we were very desktop focused because that's our work environment. That's what we're used to. Coming from the investment world, all lending, borrowing, all these things. That's desktop. It's not on your phone.
Yep.
And that's just like a reality that we've kind of learned about over the last 9 months that we definitely want to serve those users as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a huge surprise to me, although I do also only really use it on the desktop or laptop. But it was one of the reasons, I mean, not to shout out too many projects, but it was one of the reasons I was so excited for DeFi because they were bringing a mobile app to the Algorand ecosystem, and everybody's downloading a killer app on the App Store. So I just thought that was a great way to at least get exposure for the ecosystem as a whole. But moving on, let's talk about the launch of Bank Token and governance, which is also set for towards the latter end of August, if I'm correct.
Yep. So we're undergoing audit now on the code. We just kind of finished up a big push to get that all where it needed to be. And the aim is late August on that. And that is going to, the exact details on that, I think, are something that are going to be forthcoming in the next few weeks. But our goal was to build a governance system that I think in a way that is not really, like, let's face it, on Algorand right now, there really is no governance token that's really controlling much. And I think this is going to be the first time on Algorand where people are going to have real control over, the protocol of the governance token. And it's going to come down to users wanting to be engaged, obviously, but we're going to give them all the tools to be able to really plug into whatever details they want about the protocol. And I think that probably what we're going to see early on is the biggest thing that people are going to want to vote on is adding additional assets to the lending market. And then, of course, the distribution of Aeneas rewards and things like that. But the lending market, now that it's scalable, it's unlimitedly scalable. You can have as many markets as you want now, which was not an easy thing to do in a cross-collateralized lending market. If you have a pairwise lending market where it's just A to B, it's not that hard, obviously, to just add as many pairs as you want. But when you allow any asset to be used as collateral in any set for any set of borrow, it becomes very tricky because you're really limited on operations on chain. And as it's set up now, any user can be opted into up to 21 markets, and the protocol itself can handle an infinite number of markets. And so I think that what we're going to see is with Wormhole coming online, hopefully in the next month, and more blue chip assets coming on chain. Hopefully with that, we see, real utility in the token in voting for what's going to be added to the lending market. As well as, there's been some discussion that we can also, we may be able to add into the voting, even the capacity to vote on, features that we're going to add. Because really, like that's what we want this to be. We want it to be, a fully decentralized protocol that, the actual users are in control of and are stewards of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Could we talk about the distribution of the bank token? How will that work? Are there any incentives for early users when the bank token launches?
I think the details of that are going to be forthcoming in the next few weeks, but I'm going to
Fair
have to
enough.
hold off on answering that for now.
That's fair. That's fair. So I do have a question about governance, though. How will the governance structure be set up in a way like how will community users be able to propose changes to the platform, and how will Algofi prevent like spam proposals and things of
Right.
that nature?
Yeah, so that's something we definitely wrestled with, and we see governance as something that's going to grow in complexity over time. This initial version of governance is meant to have all the primary features we need, but we expect it to be able to be upgraded and changed over time. But initially, the way will work is to actually get a proposal on chain. You will need to meet a certain threshold of bank token locked. There's a concept of voting escrow, is what we call it, and that's where you lock your bank token. And the longer you lock it, the more voting power you get, basically, linearly decaying. So if you have one token locked for 1 year, that's the same as having, or sorry, if you have one token locked for 4 years, that's the same as having 4 tokens locked for 1 year, is roughly the math. And if you get over a certain threshold of, we call it, it's not a real asset, it's just a term, VE bank, voting escrow bank, which is your voting power. If you get over a certain threshold, then you're allowed to make proposals. But making proposals will have some cost associated, which will not be extremely high, but will be, non-trivial. We're talking tens of dollars.
Yeah.
And that is really just to, keep things in control. And that's variable. If we notice as a community that, $10 is not enough of a deterrent, we can turn it up to $100, whatever it needs to be. And I'll be paid in bank token. But whatever it needs to be to ensure that people are, only really pushing forward legitimate things. As far as the actual voting process, as I mentioned, you'll be locking your bank token. That'll be giving you a certain share of votes. And those votes, you'll be able to utilize them to vote on every proposal. We have delegation supported as well, which, we're going to be starting to work on the front end aspect of that. Delegation was kind of tricky to do on chain, not that awful. But the web app and interface aspect of delegation is, it needs to be a very good experience. Like, it can't just be you delegate to some random address. So I'm hoping we can find some way to integrate NFTs in that and some sort of, proof of identity that will allow people to know, they might know, okay, I'm gonna delegate to JT. I know his NFT. I know verifiably that this is the address I'm delegating to. So, and then, proposals will have a voting window. That's not, that's not that revolutionary. They're gonna have a voting window. If they need to get a quorum, so a certain percentage of the total votes available, and then they obviously need to get over whatever the supermajority threshold is, which will be, set at probably 60% or something. And then the proposals will get executed. And there's a variety of proposals. Some of them are what they could be is very simple, up to we may do more complex things. It can be, let's add, a market for wormhole Bitcoin or wormhole Ethereum. So I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be cool to see the community start to really get involved in that way.
No, it's fantastic. Seems like a very dynamic governance structure. So I'm pretty excited to see how that rolls out over the next couple months. But some exciting news that Algofi just announced recently was the integration of Coinbase Pay. Could you talk to us a little bit about how that'll affect users and how that'll benefit Algofi and Algorand, in the broader ecosystem?
Yeah, so that's something that we've had on our radar for a while. Um, it is, it's through Coinbase, it's managed by Coinbase. Legally, it's Coinbase. And it really, I think that the utility that it brings, especially if we start seeing real use of it, is it helps give people a clearer on ramp, which is great, to bring algo on chain or to purchase algo and get involved. Rather than you go to our web app and you say, okay, now I have to go to Coinbase and I have to get it and send it to my wallet and do a million different
Yeah,
things. It also hopefully, and we're very early on in this, if we see real flow through it, if Coinbase sees real use of it, I'm very hopeful that it will help give a little bit of encouragement to them to start supporting ASAs. I think if we could get USDCA on Coinbase, that would be like, wish
fantastic.
list. USDCA right now, you're limited to, there's only one
Like
place you can do it,
KuCoin,
and that's
and
Maxi.
I think KuCoin has
As
it
far
as
as
well.
I know. And you can obviously, directly, but I think being able to get USDCA on Coinbase, that would be like the best outcome for me, or from my perspective, would be, we see flow, we see people who are expanding their algo positions using this Coinbase link. And that shows Coinbase that like this is a viable ecosystem for them to invest their resources in.
Absolutely. And then maybe there's a chance we could see, maybe stable or bank token on Coinbase in the
Oh,
future, which would be
I'll
very,
be
very
happy with
interesting.
USDCA, but I
USDC, yeah,
think
yeah,
if
yeah.
we get
Beggars
stable on
can't be
there,
choosers, I suppose, for sure.
that would be great.
It'd be fantastic for sure. So let's move on to some community questions real quick before we wrap this
Definitely.
one up. We've got one coming in from Crypto for Change. How you doing out there? They're asking, oh, actually, we just kind of talked about this. Does Algofy plan to launch Bank on Coinbase with the recent addition of being able to buy directly through Algofy with Coinbase Pay? I suppose your answer would be hopefully, because we did just discuss that.
I think probably the answer is no
Yeah.
at launch, obviously, because they don't support ASAs today.
Yeah, not at
And if they
launch.
don't
Not at
support it
launch.
today, they probably won't support it in 1 month. But I think that the long-term hope would be to get Bank listed on a centralized exchange. I know Opulus is listed on a centralized exchange. I think it was very good for it that it was able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I believe they were listed on KuCoin. And we have Don65 tuning in. Hello, Don. Will audits for V2 be publicly available at launch?
Yes, they will be. We have the
Great.
audits. We are working on getting them into a location where they can be viewed on the internet.
Perfect. All right, and this one's a little bit long-winded, but we have Ivan tuning in. Is Algofy going to allow users to liquidate other accounts through the website? This would allow normal users to participate in liquidations on the platform, and then it keeps going. The dream scenario would be if I could lock up algos in a contract on the platform, and the platform would use my algo to liquidate other algo borrowers as they see fit.
Yeah, so this is a question we've been asked a lot. And I think that the thing that's important to understand is liquidations, blockchains, they don't have the ability to run a process in the background. They only do things when a person acts on the blockchain. And in the case of liquidations, the way that a liquidation happens is someone is running software to see that a liquidation is available, and then they are getting that. And allowing those people to profit off of it is a really important part of the incentive structure. that allows, us to have the real capacity for liquidation that we do. And, I'm not saying that liquidation, we don't want people to be liquidated, obviously, but when someone is under collateralized, it's extremely important. And
Of
our
course.
liquidators have liquidated millions of dollars of assets, keep through this bear market, keeping things, solvent, which has been extremely important for us. So the answer is probably will not be going on through the web app because you wouldn't be able to go fast enough. The community liquidators, they do it in the same block that the person becomes liquidatable. They're unbelievably fast.
That's
Um,
impressive.
yeah, it honestly shocks me. Uh, but what we have done to that point is we have added in the capacity. There's a variable that can be modified on the contracts. It's like any other governance action. Governance can decide what this would be set at. That a certain portion of the proceeds from liquidation will go back into the protocol. And so now liquidation will not strictly be just a mercenary thing just for those people. The users and bank token owners will share in the profits from that activity. Obviously, like it's important that gets set at a point where it's still attractive to liquidators to run. But that was kind of our response to this question that we've heard a number of times.
Fantastic. And we have one last community question. It seems another one from Don. It is, any thoughts on a non-stablecoin Nanoswap? And I suppose, Nanoswap is basically like a lower slippage kind of decentralized
Yeah,
exchange, if I have that right.
Nanoswap is
Um,
it's curve basically. It uses a different invariant than the normal. I don't want to get too technical, but then the normal AMM, which uses constant product, and basically what that lets you do is it's good for assets that are ostensibly worth the same amount, because the LP token holders, they don't have a strong opinion over which one they hold. As long as they keep getting more, they're happy. So as far as a non-stablecoin Nanoswap, I think that the strong candidates for that would be when Wormhole comes online. Given sufficient liquidity, the AlgoMINT tokens versus Wormhole tokens wrapping the same asset could be a really strong candidate there, as well as versions of wrapped algo. We talked internally a little bit about Folks Finance's GAlgo. Ultimately, we decided it wasn't quite right for a stable swap because of the nature of what it is. It's a thing that yields an algo at some point in the future. And so it should always trade, or it should trade basically at 3 months from governance roll date. It should trade at roughly like a 1.5% discount, and then slowly converge. And that property could make for, it might not work so well with a Nanoswap pool, because a 1.5% discount on a Nanoswap pool actually means a very imbalanced pool. But depending on what we see in the future, the answer is yes. We are very open and excited about possibilities for non-stablecoin Nanoswaps with equivalent tokens.
Fantastic. And I have just one last broad question, and then we'll get on out of here. This one's more regarding Algorand DeFi in general, but also incorporates Algofi's vault. So last governance period, Algofi saw about 85 million algos in their vault. And now this go round is about 143 million. I believe that's about a 70, 80, 85% increase, something around that range. Where do you see Algorand DeFi going forward? And do you think this is going to be a steady increase each period as people become more comfortable with these DeFi options to use governance with?
Yeah, I think that we're definitely going to keep seeing it grow. I mean, when you look at all the algos that are out there, especially the institutional algos, I was talking to someone recently about this on the Algo fan chat on the Twitter Spaces, about how this is the first time that we're seeing big institutional investors move algos in. I think that probably across Algorand and Folks Finance, let's say there's 300 million algos in governance that are through DeFi. Probably 150 million of that are from institutions. And we've got this lending V2, which actually has a new version of the vault, though that's not going to launch now because what would be the point? but it will launch for the next governance. And it is going to be ledger compatible. And I think that's something that will bring in even more institutional algos. And so, yeah, I see very big growth. I think I would be not surprised at all if we saw a billion algos in DeFi next governance through various vaulting solutions. And obviously, I hope that that's all on Algofi because that's the goal. And I would make an argument for why it's the place to put your algos. But yeah, I do think we're going to see growth. A lot of that is institutional investors coming to a point where they feel comfort. We also saw you mentioned we went from 80 to 143, I think, and a lot of
Yeah,
that
that's
was
true.
individuals. On our end, a lot of that was individuals. And I think that probably of that, let's go say it was a 70 mil increase. I think maybe only 15 million was institution there, which means there are a lot of individuals who are now getting more comfortable. And we've heard again and again that people say, "Oh, I want Ledger, I want Ledger, I want Ledger." Well, we're going to give you Ledger, and I'm hoping that that's going to bring in more individuals as well, because I really do think that's where Algorand needs to go. The institutional investors are good because they have the capacity to support bigger, longer term projects. But Algorand just needs to keep building its user base and keep building the number of people who are involved. And our job as developers in DeFi is to make that as easy an experience as possible. And that's part of what Coinbase Pay is there for in that link. Is it's supposed to just make it a little bit more seamless. Really, eventually, the goal is it shouldn't feel like you're using a DeFi app. It should just feel totally natural. And I think that we're taking a big step towards that, and we're going to keep moving down that road.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, that wraps it up for all the questions I had, and it looks like the community had. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to bring to the attention of my audience before we get out of here?
I think that's about it. We're busy. We're excited for the next couple months. We got a lot to push out, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time out of your day to do so.
Definitely. Thanks, JT.
No problem. Take care. All right, that was my episode with Paul Colella, the founding engineer over at Algofi. If you liked the content, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below for the YouTube algorithm. To support the channel even further, check out the description down below for links to my newsletter, as well as links to affiliate partners that will help the channel. And for those feeling extra generous, feel free to check out the Algo donation wallet that is listed down below. All funds received by the channel will go to grow the channel so we can continue to reach more and more people. I appreciate each and every one of you that like, subscribe, comment, and even the ones that don't. Anyone that's tuned into this video, I appreciate you, and we will catch you in the next one. Thanks.